morning we are joined with Mr. Louis Boudreau, who is the Executive Director of the Mississippi Prison Rights Initiative. Louis, good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
We're so glad to have had your time spent with us this morning. You have a nonprofit that has released a new book, Unit 29, Writing from Parchman Prison. It's a series, really, of a work by, you say, about 30 inmates that are serving time in Parchman's infamous Unit 29. Made national headlines, certainly here with us as well. How did this idea come about?
Well, it's interesting. At the time, I was actually teaching a workshop in Unit 31, um, which is a unit largely for the infirmed at Parchman, and it was actually at the behest of I forget which warden that he would like to try the writing workshop in 29, and this I guess was at the eve of all the uproar during the pandemic beginning of 2020. Earlier on death row. So we went over there and I had to teach the class in the zones, where they live. For some reason at that time, maybe there were security issues that I can't recall. We couldn't have like a class. There's not really a class set up in 29. You basically do it in the gymnasium at 29. So I was going into the zones and attempting to teach writing lessons and to call writing out of 29. Um, Eventually, we did have a workshop up front in the gymnasium about 2 years after we had started teaching in the zones. So it's about a 3-year effort. This is our fourth, prison book out of Mississippi, but this one was special, something to it. It took us 3 years to put together uh, under rather extreme conditions, and the result is, well, I think it's our strongest work, to date.
Well, and as you said, this is the fourth book that you guys
Yeah,
have put together from things written by Parchman inmates. But this one
yeah,
is different because Unit 29 is far different than the rest of the prison systems. It's the only maximum security prison system for men in
yes.
Mississippi. Is that what makes it so different? The extreme circumstances these men are now living with?
I suppose so. I mean, well, okay. I mean, um, quite specifically, um, it's not a complete. Unit 29 is a large facility, but at least a third of that facility is segregated. In other words, people are intentionally, because of various reasons, um, singled out in their own cells and away from general population for the most part. So that in itself is a rather different way of being.
And when you say segregated, do we mean solitary
Solitary confinement, yes.
confinement?
Essentially,
Okay.
that's what it means. I mean, there are very technical terms to some of this that I'm brushing over, but yes, basically solitary confinement.
And were you allowed access to those men as well?
Yeah, that's primarily my students. Primarily the work that's in this new collection, Unit 29, from those who are in solitary confinement, as you put it.
When you went in, I read earlier when you went into the prison system to teach these writing courses, it was to really shape them into give them an outlet, shape them into better citizens going into potentially the workforce at some point. But Unit 29 is different. So, what was the goal
Yes.
going in? Was it to bring out these pieces to put in a book? What was the goal going in to talk to these men who are in different situations than the rest of the prison system?
Well, yeah. So I would say the goal of 29 actually was to allow these segregated individuals a chance to say whatever they wanted to say, since they are cut off from everything else. and as I guess I suppose a way to what to have an untranslated a pure type of writing come directly from these cells. From these, I call them cages. Maybe that's derogatory. I don't know.
What have you generalized from reading them all? Is there a general outline or a tone that comes from these?
That's a good question. There's a general cry of anguish, I would say. Um, there's there's regret in there. Um, but most of it as is almost always the case, a yearning for freedom, to be sort of abstract about it, but that's there throughout the pages.
Through reading these, is there a story that for whatever reason really stood out to you the most?
There's a piece I'd like to read. It's quite short. Um, and what's interesting about this little piece, it's by a writer from the book, Leon Johnson. What I like about it is its clarity and the sense of not having been defeated in spite of being in an impossible situation. It's a short poem and it's called Not Institutionalized. It's on page 214 of the book. And he writes, I try to live by the mind of Christ and not look toward man. I don't allow anything to bother me. It's all about today, not yesterday, or what tomorrow may bring. I obey these that have authority over me. I do what they ask me or tell me do, and I do what I supposed to do when there's no one around standing over me. I put no one before anyone else, bond or free. Are there anyone better than you are? I'm really free within. Prison don't have any real chains on me. Now, I like that piece. It is like he's not well, as he said, he's free even in his own mind, and he may never be physically released, but he's free in his mind, and it's something as simple as that poem is. I think there's a lot of power in it.
Lewis, what was the goal by putting these stories out? What do you hope comes from it?
Oh gosh, the overall goal of this book, society has to confront this. Like this is going on now, and in your case, where you are in your backyard, literally, and it's not enough.
Confront what exactly?
I'm sorry.
Confront what exactly?
The fact that these experiences are happening, right? And you can't. How long are you going to ignore it, right? I mean, it's happening right under your nose. It's like the Jews in Nazi Germany, whatever. Like it's happening now.
Are you
can't ignore.
speaking to the circumstances, to the conditions? What when you say experiences and things happening at this moment,
Yeah, I
what
didn't
does
want
that
to.
mean?
Um, it's in front of thousands of people, but torture in a sense, right? Torture in a sense. To cage a human being is in and of itself a torture, and particularly under these conditions, it's even worse, even more. You know,
What do you think that some of the victims' families would have to say to that?
you know that's a fair enough question, and to be honest, I don't have a good answer to that. I just know human suffering when I experience it, and it's always a fair question.
Have you received any negative pushback or opinions so far, maybe from victims' families or just in general?
In the past, we have received some comments from people, and what we did in those cases is that we asked them if they would like to tell their side of the story, and we would publish it.
Right.
And we talked to them. I spoke with them, openly, And they said what they had to say. For whatever reasons, they didn't submit anything to be published to give their perspective.
Do you think that could be a possibility down the road once this book has had time to circulate, to have, kind of maybe a perspective from the other side? Are you open to that?
No, absolutely. Yeah. The whole, Vox mantra is that everyone can speak, that's the thing. That's why we do these books, and we would certainly be open to the other side.
Louis Boudreau joining us this morning, Executive Director of the Mississippi Prison Rights Initiative, with newly released book, Unit 29, Writing from Parchman Prison, that can be found at most larger retailers. And again, thank you for joining us this morning, Louis. We appreciate your time.
I'm breaking in, shaping up.